Hello, and welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're diving into something absolutely fascinating: how complex life is actually put together. We're going to take an incredible journey from the microscopic to the macroscopic, exploring the literal fundamental building blocks of life itself.
I want you to start by just imagining a complete, living, breathing organism. Seriously, picture a towering oak tree, a running deer, or, just think about yourself. When you stop and look at the sheer complexity of a whole organism, it's kind of mind-boggling, right? How on earth does nature build something so intricate? What are the basic microscopic units that stack up layer by layer to create you and me? Okay, let's dive into our roadmap for today so you know exactly where we're headed. We'll start with the basics of life, move right into the biological hierarchy, see animal organization in action, compare some animal and plant systems, and finally, we'll test your knowledge. So, kicking things off with Section 1, the basics of life, unicellular versus multicellular. Basically, life falls into two broad categories depending on how it's built. First up, we have unicellular organisms. As the name gives away, these guys are made from just one single cell that literally has to do everything to keep the organism alive. On the flip side, we have multicellular organisms, which are made up of vast collections of specialized cells. Now, our focus today is squarely on this complex multicellular life. But to really grasp complex life, we have to start at square one. We need to define the ultimate starting point, the cell. Cells are the basic structural and functional units of all living organisms. They're the fundamental building blocks. If you are alive, you are made of cells. But here's the catch. In multicellular organisms, these cells aren't just generic little blobs. They become highly specialized to carry out very particular jobs.
Moving on to Section 2, the biological hierarchy, step by step.
And this brilliantly illustrates the strict hierarchy of life. Complex organisms aren't just random, chaotic jumbles of cells. They actually follow a highly organized five-step structure. We start at the absolute tiniest level with organelles, which make up cells. Then, cells group into tissues. Tissues combine into organs, and those organs coordinate to form organ systems. Let's break each of these down real quick. Step 1 is the organelle. You can basically think of these as tiny organs living inside a cell. They are specialized structures within a cell that carry out very specific functions. A perfect example of this is the mitochondrion. If you remember anything from biology class, it's probably this one. Yep, the classic powerhouse of the cell, where aerobic respiration actually happens, providing the energy the cell needs to survive. Now, stepping up past the cell level, we arrive at tissues. In a multicellular organism, those specialized cells we talked about, they don't work alone. When you get a group of similar specialized cells working together as a team to carry out a particular function, that's what we call a tissue. Muscle tissue, for instance, is literally just thousands of muscle cells contracting perfectly together. As we continue climbing up the ladder, tissues form organs. An organ is a distinct structure made up of entirely different tissues working together to perform a specific function. Think of your heart or your stomach. And finally, those organs form organ systems. These are groups of organs teaming up to carry out major biological tasks like digestion or circulating your blood. Let's look at this in the real world with Section 3, Animal Organization in Action, the zoom out. Now, what's really interesting here is how clearly we can visualize this microscopic scale. Starting at the very beginning with our organelle, the mitochondria. If we zoom out slightly to the cellular level, we find a specialized heart muscle cell, absolutely packed with those mitochondria. Then, zoom out one more time to the tissue level, and you see a web of those individual heart muscle cells physically linked together to form heart muscle tissue. It's just a perfect visual of that stacking effect we've been talking about. And if we keep that zoom out going all the way to the macro level, that heart muscle tissue forms a distinct organ, the heart. But the heart doesn't work in isolation, right? It powers an entire network of arteries and veins, forming the full organ system level you see here, the circulatory system. And finally, that entire system, working flawlessly alongside many others, gives life to the complete organism, in this case, the majestic deer. Next up, Section 4, Animal and Plant Systems Working Together. Take a look at how we can compare these different biological systems. On the top half, we have plant systems. The shoot system, for example, is an organ system made of organs like the leaf, stem, and flower. And those are built from tissues like the epidermis, xylem, and phloem. Down below that, we have familiar animal systems, like our own digestive system. Its organs, the stomach and intestines, are built from entirely different tissues like muscle and epithelial tissue. But here is the wild part. Despite the massive differences between, say, a leaf and a human stomach, the underlying architectural rules remain exactly the same. To really summarize the sheer breadth of this biology, complex organisms are kept alive by multiple interacting systems. Plants primarily rely on their shoot and root systems. Animals use a massive array, including the excretory, nervous, respiratory, and reproductive systems. But the golden rule remains. Every single one of these complex systems ultimately relies on specific organs, which are built from specific tissues, which are built from specific cells. It all scales up.
All right, we've covered a ton of ground today. Let's jump into section 5, test your knowledge. Let's put this into practice. Okay, here we have a diagram of a plant leaf alongside 3 numbered labels. Label 1 points to the whole leaf itself, label 2 is pointing to a single palisade mesophyll structure deep inside, and label 3 points to the upper epidermis layer on top. I want you to take just a few seconds to silently guess which option here, A, B, C, or D, correctly identifies the organ, the cell, and the tissue.
Well, if you guessed B, you are absolutely right. Nailed it. So the crucial point here is understanding exactly why. Label 1, the whole leaf, is an organ because it's a distinct, complete structure made of multiple tissues working together. Label 2, that palisade mesophyll, is just a single, highly specialized cell within that leaf. And label 3, the upper epidermis, is a tissue because it's a continuous layer of similar cells working together to form a protective surface. See how perfectly that maps out?
I want to leave you with this final thought. If you hold up and look at your own hand right now, you are literally looking at skin tissue, covering muscle tissue, covering bone tissue. All of those are acting as organs within systems that make up you, the complete organism. Every single living thing you interact with today is a beautifully stacked hierarchy of microscopic parts perfectly working in unison. So as you go about the rest of your day, ask yourself, can you trace the journey from organelle to organism in everything you touch? Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer.